I was born July 29th, 1929 in Lincoln, Nebraska. And because my dad was a troubleshooter for a company, he went to wherever there was problems. So I went to 13 different grade schools before I was in the 5th grade. And then I went to 3 different high schools before I was a junior. He was moving again, so I didn't want to face another new high school, so I quit high school and joined the Army. My dad was a really talented guy. He was a plumber, an electrician, a welder, an aircraft engine mechanic. He could do anything you asked him to do. So he was I didn't inherit any of his talents. I got 5 thumbs when it comes to mechanical stuff. No, my brother he inherited all my dad's talents.
So you have a younger brother?
Yeah, he's since passed away because he's too dumb to listen to doctors. He doesn't do what they tell him to do, so he passed away here about 4 or 5 years ago.
You have a sister? Or?
She died of a brain tumor about 6 years ago. So I have no other siblings.
When did you join and why did you join the military and where was it?
I enlisted in the Army in Birmingham, Alabama on January, I don't know the exact date, of January 1947. Because we'd moved and I had changed high schools 5 times in 3 years, and I couldn't take facing another new high school. It would have been my 5th high school in about 5 years, so I decided I had enough of it. I wanted some stability, so I joined the Army.
How old was you?
I was 17. My parents had to sign permission for me to go in.
What was your father's reaction to your decision to join the Army?
Well, if that's what I wanted to do, I obviously didn't want to go back to school, so he figured I probably wouldn't do well if I didn't want to be there, and he was probably right. So he figured, well, go in the Army. Or do whatever you want to do, so I did.
What was the situation in the United States around the time that you joined the military? It was obviously after the World War II, right?
Yeah, right.
And you didn't know any war is coming soon, right?
No.
So tell me about the sort of domestic situation of the United States around the time that you joined the military.
A lot better than it is now. Most people had jobs. I didn't personally know anybody that was unemployed. People were making a decent living. But I didn't have any skills, so I figured I'd go in the Army, maybe I'd pick up some skills.
Had you known about Asia or Asian history, culture? Did you learn anything from your history class in the school?
No. The only thing I remember is because I had gone to school in the North. When we moved south, I had to learn Civil War history all over again because their battle names are different. And according to them, they won the war.
But you knew nothing about Asia?
No, not a thing.
Okay.
So I think my recruiter had been in the 1st Cavalry Division, so I enlisted for the 1st Cavalry Division when I went in the Army.
Where did you join the Army? Alabama?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh.
And what happened? Tell me about your boot camp, what kind of training that you received, and so on.
Well, they sent me up to North Fort Lewis, Washington. Weather's a lot different there. A lot of rain. I remember going out on maneuvers. We had to dig foxholes.
You mean the state of Washington?
Yeah, state of Washington, yeah. And it was so stony that we got blisters on our hands from trying to dig foxholes. And we went on night compass maneuvers. We had marksmanship training. We test fired machine guns, light machine guns, and heavy machine guns. Then we watched demonstrations of light artillery and heavy artillery, and then I finished, and then I went over to Japan.
So what was your specialty? It was Army and
I was a rifleman.
Rifleman.
Yeah.
Tell me about your life in the boot camp. Do they feed you well? How was it? Was
Yeah,
it
food.
hard?
Yeah, it was fairly hard. I mean, they were pretty strict. I know if you didn't follow instructions, I know one guy wasn't following instructions, so they made him dig a hole 6 feet deep by 6 feet wide, and he had to march around it all night long, and then the next morning he had to fill it in. So he got what he asked for.
Did you enjoy it? Or?
I guess I didn't hate it. I got along. I put on some weight. I was pretty skinny when I went in.
Oh.
I was about 125 pounds.
Better food than home?
No, my mom was a good cook, so it wasn't better food, but it was just primarily the exercise and the food.
Did you have any girlfriend around that time?
No.
No.
No. We never stayed in one place long enough for me to get acquainted with a girl.
Must be very hard for you, right? To go around and changing the schools and so on.
Yeah, I never had any long-term friends because it's moving all the time. Although once I got to Tokyo, I ran into a guy I'd been in high school for 6 months with, which is kind of miraculous.
So, when did you know that you were headed to Asia?
Well, when I enlisted, they told me I was going to the 1st Cavalry Division. They were stationed in Japan, so I knew in the beginning.
Oh, so from the beginning you knew that?
Yeah, I knew that.
Did you learn anything about Japan from the military?
Everything I learned is after I got there.
Okay. So, where did you left for Japan?
Fort Lawton, Washington, which is just south of Seattle.
Fort what?
Fort Lawton,
Oh,
Lawton, Lawton. 13 days on a troop ship.
How was it?
They kept us busy. Whenever we got hungry, we'd tell them we're feeling seasick, and they'd give us a big sheet of saltine crackers. But we chip paint. I suppose the guys on the way back repainted the ship. I don't know. They didn't let us just lounge around. But I enjoyed the night sitting on the aft of the ship, watching the phosphorescence in the ocean. That's a beautiful sight to behold.
Did you
Yeah,
have a camera?
yeah, I had a camera,
Oh,
black and white. Yeah, I've got an album of pictures that I took.
did you take any pictures during the journey to Japan?
No, actually, I think I did. I don't think I took a camera with me. I think I bought one when I got there.
Okay, you got there from
Yeah,
there. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the Japan.
Okay.
How much were you paid around that time? And what was your rank?
I was a private when I got there. Then I made PFC, and then I made corporal. But most of my pay came home for savings.
How much were you paid?
I guess it must have been, when I was a corporal, it's probably about $100 a month. But I sent $75 a month home for savings.
When you were a corporal, right? But
Yeah.
when you were private,
I have no idea what my base pay was as a private. That's so long ago. It was,
so tell me about what is your first reaction, the impression about Japan when you arrived there.
Yokohama Harbor was a smell from the fertilizer, but after a week, it was like it was never there. The only time I noticed it was when the farmers would bring honey bucket wagons into town. You could smell it then because it was pretty concentrated. They were all right, pretty close. But most of the time, it wasn't even noticeable.
So what else? I mean, it's a brand new country to you, strange country, different culture, different history, different people. What did you feel about those?
Well, the people seemed pretty nice. We weren't supposed to fraternize a lot, but friend of mine used to go sightseeing at different places. Then one year in the summer, I got permission to stay off base overnight, and I climbed Mount Fuji. And after I got off the train, this Japanese school teacher approached me, and he taught English to elementary kids, so he wanted to practice his English. So we went up Mount Fuji together and came back down together the next day. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
So where did you work? You said that you joined the 1st Cavalry,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And tell me about those units. What was their mission? What did they do? And anything that related to Korea? Did you know anything about Korea from there? Tell me about those 1st Cavalry unit that you joined.
The only thing I ever heard about Korea was some of the Korean people who had been brought to Japan as laborers, and they were the bootleggers in the country, I think.
What?
Bootleggers, made liquor.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Japanese communists were the troublemakers. They were really pretty bad. And, our duties were supposed to be occupation, but when I first got there, the first thing we did was go up in maneuvers up on Mount Fuji. We walked all night to get there, carrying our packs and weapons and ammunition and stuff. Spent 2 days there. We got about 5 hours sleep the whole 2 days. So, I don't know, when I left basic training, they said it's going to be smooth sailing from here. When I got overseas, they were 10 times harder on us because a lot of the guys in the outfit were survivors of World War II, and they wanted you to know what you were doing because they survived, and they wanted us to get the same skills that they had so that we could survive too.
Where was the 1st Cavalry in Japan?
I was went to a town called Omiya, and it was Camp King, and that was probably maybe 35.
Town called what?
Omiya?
Omiya.
It was probably 30 some odd miles outside of Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
The division headquarters was Camp Drake, a little further out. Then I got transferred into brigade headquarters, and they were in the old Imperial Marine Barracks right next to the palace. So I was there up until May of '49 when we went up to Mount Fuji, and I didn't leave Mount Fuji until I came back to go to the States.
So you arrived in Japan 1947. What month was that?
April.
April.
Yeah.
Okay. And how Japanese perceived the American soldiers there, military occupation of the United States?
People generally never caused any problems at all. It was mostly our guys when they got drunk caused problems. So, but outside of the communists, I don't think we ever had any trouble with any Japanese people.
Did they welcome you or what? What was the sort of attitude and atmosphere of Japanese there about U.S. occupation?
Well, they didn't have a choice. I mean, we were there, and so they just accepted it, I guess. I didn't sense any antagonism or anything like that.
Have you worked in the MacArthur's headquarters?
No. No, when I was there, our office was probably about a half a mile away from his. Yeah, I got discharged in December of 1949. To school?
What school? High school?
No, accounting.
Accounting school.
Yeah. But then the Korean War started, and they were starting to call people back in the infantry, and I didn't want to go back in the infantry, so I went in the Air Force.
You went to Air Force?
Yeah.
When did you join the Air Force?
It was about October of 1950.
Okay. And how come you didn't go to Korea?
Not a lot of Air Force people were going to Korea, except pilots and crew members. So
Where did you station then?
I was assigned to a radar squadron in Vermont.
Vermont.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had our radar antenna on top of an old Army barracks. Every time there was a high wind, they had to take the radar antenna down so it didn't blow apart. But they built us a new.
So while you were in Japan, you didn't have any information about the situations in Korea or any military drill that you were ready to be dispatched to Korea? Anything that related to Korea? Please share that with us.
Well, that's why we were, when we went up into Mount Fuji in May, we were told that was in preparation because MacArthur was sure the North Koreans were going to invade. He just didn't know when.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was General MacArthur was sure about that?
He said the word we got was within a year of the time the last combat troops come out of South Korea, the North Koreans are going to invade. He was off by 5 days.
How did you know? Did you read that or?
I was in a brigade intelligence at the time, and that was the word that we got. And that's why we went up on maneuvers in Mount Fuji. It was in preparation for that.
Can you tell me more about that intelligence on North Korea's intention to attack?
Well, that's all we were told, that MacArthur thought they were going to attack within a year of the time they pulled out the last combat
Who's
troops.
going to attack?
The North Koreans. The North Koreans, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened then? Your Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, withdrew the defensive perimeters from the Korean Peninsula. What was the reaction from the MacArthurs?
I have no idea.
What was the basis of General MacArthur's prediction that North Korea would attack?
I don't know. He was a military technician. I wasn't.
So you didn't have anything related, any other information related to
No,
that?
just what we were told, that's what was probably going to happen.
You worked at the intelligence office there. How did you gather the information about Korea?
We didn't.
You didn't.
No, our primary job was to keep track of what was going on in Japan.
How did you gather the information?
We had military police units stationed at various remote areas in our area of responsibility. We got reports from the Japanese police. The people in our office translated the reports into English.
You didn't stay all the time inside of the U.S. military barracks. You went out?
No.
And
No.
what did you do?
Well, I told you about the time I climbed Mount Fuji. I went down to Kamakura to see the Buddha down there. And we went to some of the other temples. And then one time I was with a detail, took a bunch of silver down to the mint in Osaka. They put a dozen of us in a railroad car with a big box of silver, and we went down overnight, and we stayed the weekend, and we came back on Sunday.
All right. Most of the soldiers were designated as Korean War veterans if you were in the military from 1950 to 53. When were you discharged from Air Force?
I stayed in for 20 years. I didn't get out until 1967.
Huh. So, were you not designated as Korean War veterans?
I never actually served in Korea, so I don't have the Korean Service Medal, no.
Yeah, you don't have Korean Service Medal, but still.
But I was credited with service during the Korean War, yes.
So you could be designated as Korean War veterans.
If they didn't specify that you had to be actually in Korea, yes.
You wrote the book, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me about it.
It's the Korean War fiction versus fact.
Korean War fiction versus fact.
Fact, right.
Okay.
And that was because of David Halberstam's A Coldest Winter. So I went through all the errors that I knew were, what he said was, I wrote what he actually wrote, and then I wrote what the actual facts were.
So your book is based on Halberstam's Coldest Winter.
Well, it's a response to his book, yes. But it's not based on his book.
Right, response.
It's based on official records.
Well, how did you know so many wrong informations in that book when you first read about it? How did you know?
Well, the first thing was the fact that he said that the troops weren't trained. And having gone through 6 months of combat training before, I knew that wasn't true. We were badly equipped, but it wasn't because we weren't trained. We just didn't have the proper equipment to work with.
But you were not trained to be dispatched to Korea, but you were just trained to be there and to deal with the problems coming out of Japan, right?
No. The last 6 months was specifically in training to get ready for Korea.
So the General MacArthur has a plan to dispatch his units to Korea?
Every combat division in Korea was their occupation. Their primary mission was changed from occupation duty to being trained for combat.
Right.
And that happened in 1949. General Walker put out a directive about training.
Every American soldier withdrew by 1949 from Korea.
No.
No, yes.
No. June of 19. Yeah, you're right. June of 1949.
Yeah.
The 5th Regimental Combat Team went from.
Right. But why then General MacArthur training his units to dispatch to be Korea after they withdraw from Korea?
Because he was sure as when it happened, and he wanted us to be as ready as we could. He was ordered to in 1948 to reduce the strength in the Far East from 6 divisions to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that was getting the 6th and 7th divisions out of Korea.
Mm-hmm.
They took the 82nd Airborne from northern Japan, sent them back to the States, and they brought the 7th Infantry to replace the 82nd Airborne in northern Japan. The troops who were left became the 5th Regimental Combat Team, and they left in June of 49. And they went to Hawaii.
So you saying that the military, U.S. military occupied Japan was trained to be dispatched to Korea?
That's what we're told.
Mm-hmm. So I see the contradiction there because, U.S. policy was to withdraw the soldiers from Korea, but General MacArthur was training his unit to dispatch them to Korea.
Because he felt that it was going to happen, and he didn't want us to be totally untrained when we had to go.
So
he was looking after the troops.
So you object to
Halberstam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about it. How did you do more research about the points that made by Halberstam and it's wrong?
Well, I went down to the National Archives and look at the official records, and one of the things that he said that there was no artillery support for Task Force Smith, but there was. There were 180 men and 5 howitzers were actually there.
How did you know?
Because I looked at the 52nd Field Artillery war diaries, and Halberstam he took a lot of his information from Appleman, who didn't get it right either. He records 2 different numbers of troops who were in Task Force Smith, and neither one of them are correct, based on information that I've gotten since then. But he didn't go over there till 1951, so he obviously didn't check official records like he should have.
Was himself also Korean War veteran?
Appleman?
Yeah.
No, he was an Army historian, and he was supposed to write an official history of the Korean War. But during the period he was writing it, he spent more time in the States than he did in Korea, looking at his notes down in Carlisle.
What else did you find out from his book that is
Halberstam?
turned out to be wrong? Yeah, according to your own judgment.
No, none of it's my judgment. It's basically facts.
Yeah.
In one instance, he wrote that the commander of the 3rd Battalion of the 8th Cavalry Regiment held a memorial service for the 400 men of his unit that had been killed since he came to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Total killed in action since that unit, the whole regiment came to Korea, was less than 200, according to the official records. So how could he have 400 men killed when the whole, in one battalion, when the whole regiment only had 243 killed during that period of time?
Did you find that fact from the documents?
Yeah, the war diary said they listed how many killed, how many wounded, how many missing each month. They kept a running tally.
But that can be wrong too, right?
Not very wrong. I mean, there can be some errors, but the fact, there's no way that they could have had 400 men killed in that one battalion. And his battalion didn't come until, they didn't even get to Korea until August 25th. The rest of the regiment got there January 18th, or July 18th. So they were about 6 weeks later, that one battalion.
Any other facts that you think was wrong?
Well, I've enumerated about 300 of them in my book.
What are the most exemplary cases?
In one place, he talks about General MacArthur saying that, how many of you troops who landed at Pusan are still with the regiment? And he says, like 2 men step forward. Well, the division didn't land at Pusan. They landed at Pohang-dong.
What though?
Pohang-dong,
Uh-huh.
on the east coast. That's where the 1st Cavalry Division landed. They didn't go to Pusan.
Mm-hmm.
They never went through Pusan. So obviously that's, because the 24th Division went first, then the 25th Division, then the 1st Cav went. The 5th and 8th Regiment, the 7th Regiment didn't get there for about another week. They got held up by a typhoon.
Any other book that you read and found that is wrong?
Ridgway also says there's no artillery support for Task Force Smith.
Who?
General Ridgway.
Uh-huh.
And there's one by a General Paeksoon Hope.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that originated the story about the he asked how many men of the 5th Cavalry Regiment were still there who landed at Pusan.
Yeah.
And since the 5th Cavalry never landed at Pusan, that he was obviously wrong there. I don't know what else he's said is wrong, but I know that is.
And why do you think you are right and he is wrong? What is the basis of your argument?
Official records. So the 1st Cavalry Division, all of it, went through Pohang-dong. None of them went through Pusan except the 3rd Battalions, which came 6 weeks after the. And then they landed at Pusan on the 25th of August, 1950. But all the rest of the division came on through Pohang. So you'd have to go through the book to pick out all the facts that I've stated have come from official records. And since then, I've gotten personal narratives like the one from the artillery battery commander. And I found he had a personal narrative down in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, of what happened.
Must be good. It's finding out the wrong facts.
Well, it takes a lot of work. Sometimes you have to know what you're looking for because you have to ask for specific documents.
What motivates you, to do this fact findings and correcting those wrong information?
Well, so much that you read is not correct. I just want to get the facts out there so people know what really happened.
Is it your personal kind of
Yeah.
personality, or is it something that you had about the Korean War?
Well, I could probably do the same thing about a lot of other things, but since I got started there, that's where I've still developing a website It's much easier to put stuff on a website than it is in a book, and a lot less expensive.
Have you been to Korea?
Never.
Not at all?
No.
Okay. Do you have any comments about the Korean War? Why it started, what happened, what happened after the Korean War? Anything that you want to say about the Korean War? And why do you think it's been called Forgotten War?
Well, I think nobody liked to talk about it much,
Why? Why not?
because if you want the facts, we got beaten.
What do you mean by that, beaten?
We didn't start out. We started out a lot worse than we wound up a lot worse than when we started. A lot of men were killed, wounded, injured.
Give me an example. You saying that the facts been distorted about the Korean War in the beginning?
No, I think if the government hadn't been so intent on reducing our military, it probably never would have happened. But I think the communists perceived that we were weak and they could beat us, and therefore they started. And if the thing that gets me is President Truman sent troops to Vietnam in July after the Korean War started, through their advisory, but he still sent troops that could have better been used in Korea.
Mm.
So he's the one that got us involved in Vietnam in the first place, not President Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And if he had listened to General MacArthur in the first place, been allowed to bomb those bases in Manchuria, Korea would be one country today. But Truman said you might bring the Chinese into the war. Well, at that particular time in history, there were at least 90,000 Chinese in North Korea already. And they wound up with, over 500,000 in North Korea? It was never a declared war, but we were at war with China. At least with...
When was it that Truman sent the U.S. soldiers to Vietnam?
July 1950.
1950.
Mm-hmm. It's in the records.
How many?
They were supposed to be advisory troops. I don't know, probably maybe a few hundred.
Yeah. So,
It wasn't all, but he's the one that got us basically involved there
yeah.
in the first place.
Any other comments about the Korean War?
I read a lot of comments about ROC troops bugging out, but one of the first accounts I read about when the 8th Cavalry was involved at Unsan was that the ROC regiment or division, whatever it was, the commander refused to be relieved by the 8th Cavalry until he'd gained back the 2,000 yards that he'd lost. He said, I'm not letting you relieve me until I gain that ground back. Well, he was overwhelmed by Chinese, but nevertheless, he stood his ground. So I think you can't make a general statement that the ROCs bugged out, because some did, but some Americans did too. So I don't think that was a characteristic of ROC soldiers.
Why do you think it's been forgotten? Why people didn't want to talk about it?
Well, I think maybe we lost so many men for what some people perceive was for no reason at all. We went into the war at one point, and we fought the war and lost a lot of men, and we still were right where we started, basically.
But that doesn't seem to be the reason for people not to talk about it, because the war, you sacrifice a lot of people and soldiers,
Yeah,
human resources.
I don't know. I have no idea why anybody even started calling it the Forgotten War.
Okay. Any other comments that you want to make?
I can't think of anything else.
Anything else?
Just trying to get the facts out there as best as I can find them, anyway.
I think you have points to make about the books that are written about Korean War, that there are so many wrong information there.
Yeah, they're
What do you want to say about those facts?
well. A lot of the people never check the facts at all. They just assume whatever somebody else wrote before them was true. I fact checked everything that everybody ever said, including General Pink, whatever. I actually checked the actual fact, what actually happened, not what somebody said happened or what somebody thought happened.
How long did it take? I mean, tell
I'm
me
still-
about
I-
it. When you go down there, how long do you stay, and what is the kind of process of you working there in National Archive?
Well, I usually stay for about 3 days or 4. And I spend probably 6 hours a day in the archives, and they have these boxes of documents. They're basically by whatever unit was there, but they've also have documents for Far East Command and General Headquarters, and so. But you have to requisition them, and then I take the boxes. And the last couple of trips down, I use a scanner. I just put the document in a scanner. Scan it, goes right into my computer, and it's a lot more accurate. It's actually faster than using a camera. So, but I've made probably 6. I've probably spent a total of about 18 to 20 days down there so far, and I'm nowhere near done.
You're planning to go down there again?
Oh yeah. 'Cause I've only got I think February '51, and in some cases is the farthest I've gone. Most of the stuff I got is June through December of 1950, and that's not even the half of it. Then I went to the Military History Institute. They have different types of records in the archives. They have a lot of personal testimonies and things that aren't available at the National Archives. But I'm going to have to make a couple more trips down there too. So I've got probably another at least 5 or 6 trips anyway before I even begin to be done.
Thank you very much. If you don't have any other comments, you don't?
No.
I think you are very enthusiastic about these facts, and I hope that you can continue to research about the Korean War and clarify the things that is not supposed to be in the book.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.